I wonder if someone's going to be there. Although the game starts late, right? Oh, that's not late at all. Talking about the Bulldogs, California. Interesting. I'll call Nesson. Oh, you saw this and you're like, where did I take this picture? Oh, that's funny. Yeah. That's right here. Was this always up or was it up recently? I don't have like I feel like this was put up recently, right? It wasn't from when we started. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's a lot of things for a campaign. Huh. It's beautiful. Very pretty. Okay. What else did I want to mention?
You've been busy uploading stuff.
Oh my gosh. It's so I got someone to help me basically upload all the stuff to the new SoundCloud account. Yeah, so like every day there's playlists going up. There's a lot of content. And the YouTube channel, the new one, is also getting repopulated. It's pretty cool. All right, we'll let some folks in online. Might as well let them into the fun. All right, let's see. Hey, Dr. Maxey.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Seems to be that I'm the class of one today.
No. There was more a second ago. What happened to? Yeah, here we go. You're gonna find some company soon.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
There we go. All right. Here we go. We get the folks.
Oh yeah, Mariana, great.
Yeah. Hey, Mariana. Good to see you. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Hi, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So great to be here.
Great to see you. Great to see you. Fran, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Welcome. We have Tony joining. Okay, we got the crew. Okay, we're gonna get started. We have a pretty remarkable conversation today to explore. So let's jump in. There's gonna be a lot to talk about. And hey, Tony, welcome. All right, folks. So a formal welcome to Kabbalah Cafe. This is our weekly look at all things spiritual and mystical, and a really great way to get the week started with a bang. Okay, so I want to begin like this. There has been a lot of tension over the years with the following dynamic. The tension is there is a natural born, that's the only word I can use, is tension between body and soul. And it's caused a lot of pain for humanity for a lot of years. So let me explain. The natural human condition is such that life is a composite of body and soul. In other words, when we talk about life, when we talk about a human being living, right? So life itself is the product of a soul enlivening a body. The body is the case. The soul is the energy fills the case that is the body, and it enlivens the body. It's kind of like, if you want to think about it, and we're going to, of course, evolve this idea and this conversation as we go along. But on a very basic level, you could think of it in the sense of a watch and a battery. So you have a watch, okay, you're wearing a watch, and the watch itself wouldn't move, it wouldn't be animated, it wouldn't tell you the time, it wouldn't do anything unless it had some sort of energy source inside of it, which we'll call the battery. So in order to have a functioning watch, you need both elements. You need the watch, you need the mechanics, the hardware, but then you need, of course, the battery pack or the battery to give it juice, to give it life, to make it move. So you need both battery and watch to make it happen. Think about, I'm looking right over here, there's a phone that's plugged in that has a nice blue hue on a screen. That tells me that it's plugged in, unless I'm seeing that wrong. Yeah, it looks like it's plugged in, right? So you could have a phone. If it's not plugged in, it's not going to work. You plug it in, now it can work. So that's the way things work. Same thing, we can think of a human being. The human being has a body. We all have bodies, right? That's the physical stuff. But the fact that we can move, the fact that we can think, the fact that we're animated, the fact that we're alive, that's the product of a soul that enlivens the body. On a very basic level, it's the battery of the soul that enlivens the case, the hardware, whatever, the material that is the body. So the soul enlivens the body. So what is death? What is death? A definition of death, a Jewish definition of death, is when soul and body separate, right? It's when the soul is no longer animating, enlivening, giving vitality to the body. The soul goes its way, it separates out from the body, it leaves the body as it is, and the body as it is on its own, without a soul, it's not alive. Right? We know what that looks like. We know what a body without a soul looks like. It looks like a body without a soul. Unmoving, unthinking, unfeeling, just a body. Could have all the limbs intact. It could look exactly the same as a moment earlier. A moment earlier, the person was breathing, the heart was pumping, the brain was functioning, and a moment later, the body is no longer alive. What happens in that moment between life and death? The way we understand it is the soul is no longer active and animated inside that body. It no longer is enlivening that body. Not that the soul no longer exists, not that the body no longer exists. The body is here. The soul also exists. Where? Wherever souls exist, but not animating this body. So life, because we're really talking about life today, not death, life is the co-joining, the commingling, the cooperation of body and soul. If you just had a soul, that's not life. That's not the life that we see. That's not, because it would be like an angel. It would be a spirit. Whatever that looks like. And spoiler alert, it doesn't look like anything because you can't see it. Right? So whatever that is, it is. So if you have just the soul without a body, okay, just a body without a soul, all right, again, we know what that looks like. That's a dead body pretty much. A soul in a body, a soul animating the body, now that's the magic formula. That's what life looks like. So because life is born, quite literally, of the co-joining of these two forces of body and soul, and furthermore, because body and soul are so diametrically opposed, this is the big idea, there is a natural tension in life that drives us crazy. So let me elaborate on this for a quick second. Why do I say that body and soul are diametrically opposed? Think about it. The body is a material being. It's of the earth. The way it's described in Torah with Adam and Eve's creation, which, by the way, not all of us are created the same way Adam and Eve were created, right? Because Adam and Eve were created by God, and where there's biological function that creates us. However, essentially, we are the same, which means that just like God took from the earth to create the body of Adam and then the body of Eve, etc., our bodies too are earthly, material. The body is physical. The soul, by contrast, is completely spiritual by nature. So what you have here, interestingly enough, is not just a co-joining or a commingling of two forces, two dynamics, that when they come together, they produce life, like a live body, but these two forces shouldn't belong and don't belong in the same room together. These two forces are so opposite, it doesn't make sense that they could even coexist. The body is schlepping by nature, is pulling lower. The soul by nature is pulling higher. The body wants earth. The soul wants heaven, two completely different realities. And yet, somehow, some way, these two polar opposite extremes work together. And yes, as we'll see today, as we've discussed in the past, it's described as, and I'm paraphrasing, kicking and screaming they work together, but they work together. The soul, which would rather be elsewhere, the body, which would rather be doing who knows what, they come together, and it's that magical, for lack of a better term, shidduch, that's that magical match, that magical co-joining that produces the dynamic that we call human life. It's miraculous. It shouldn't be. In fact, Kabbalah says this is referred to as something that is a pella. Pella in Hebrew means a wonder. It's even higher than a miracle. Certain things are miracles, and okay, it doesn't make sense, but it's amazing and it's a miracle. But a pella is even higher than a nace. Nace is a miracle. Pella means it's a wonder. Wonder means like you can't, speechless. Can't even say anything. It's like so incredible, makes no sense. The co-joining of body and soul, the soul animating the body, is the greatest miracle that exists. Which, by the way, this is parenthetical now, which, by the way, is why Judaism reminds us that when we think about this, we'll realize that life itself is a miracle, and we should treasure every single breath we take. Every morning we wake up, we should be filled with a gratitude that is unbelievable. See, most of the time, again, all this is still in the parentheses. So this is still parenthetical. Most of the time, we take life for granted. Now, who am I to say what you might take for granted? I say this humbly because I don't know what's inside your head, but I would say that most people, given, I don't know, my understanding of the way I think and the way, my conversation with others, I think that most people, okay, I don't know most, many people can go through a day without really pausing and thinking about how incredible and how miraculous and how wondrous this thing called life is. Not like life in general, but like the fact that I'm alive, take it for granted, and then only focus on the negative stuff. It's easy when you take stuff for granted, so then it's easy to focus on the stuff that's going wrong. So if you have expectations that things should be a certain way, and then there's something out of place, it's like, what's this is wrong, this is terrible, it's the worst, life is miserable. Meanwhile, one second, none of this makes sense. Life itself makes no sense. How can a body, which is a piece of earth, right, so to speak, a piece of matter, dead by nature, right? How could the body be enlivened, forced into animation by a soul that by nature shouldn't be invested in a body in the first place? The whole thing doesn't make sense. And every morning when we wake up, Judaism reminds us to say the Modani prayer. It's 11 words. 12 words, close, 12 words or so, that speak to, in Hebrew, that speak to our gratitude for being alive today. When we're sleeping, of course, we're alive when we sleep, but when we wake up and we're conscious of the fact that we're alive, we're encouraged to take a moment, pause for a moment, say the Modeh Ani prayer in Hebrew, in English, whatever language is your preferred, and acknowledge the fact that the soul and the body are now together, and it's incredible. So, all of this to say that the soul and the body, though two opposites, are somehow forced together for however long we have, 70, 80, 90, 100 years, 110, 120 years, whatever we have. The two are put together in the same room, in the same space. The door is shut. Good luck, right? Work it out, figure it out. This is your battery pack. It's your spiritual conscience, etc. Here's the body. This is the tools that you need. These are the tools that you'll need to get stuff done in the physical world, because the soul can't do things without a body. Body can't do things without a soul either. Work together. Good luck figuring it out. And we struggle, and we've been struggling since the beginning of time with ironing out the differences between body and soul. So I want to share with you two approaches. Actually, three approaches. Two approaches that are the most popular approaches to dealing with the tension between body and soul. And the third approach, which is the Jewish approach. The first two are opposite approaches, but they reflect the same thought process. The third approach is uniquely Jewish, and it's a radically different approach. So let's jump right in. Approach number one is the hedonic approach, or the hedonistic approach. That approach takes it as states as follows. I have a body and a soul. My soul provides my body with animation. It also provides a spiritual awareness to my being. But my body has its desires and its needs and its wants, and it's got its personality. And so I choose, good morning, to focus on my body as opposed to focusing on my soul. That is the approach of the hedonistic approach. It's the approach that says, we'll pass it around soon, it's the approach that says, let's focus on the here and now. Let's focus on gashmiut. Let's focus on materialism. And an individual, in fact, I would say many a culture has leaned into this approach throughout the years, throughout humanity. I mean, think about how many cultures, how many civilizations have emerged in the history of mankind that have been completely filled and all about materialism, right? All about hedonism, all about a celebration of the body and physicality and material things, material pursuits, decadence. Think about the ancient Romans, all about decadence, physical power, physical might, indulgence, right? It's all about physical. It's the physical. So they took the tension that exists between body and soul, and they said, you know what? We're going to lean into the body. The soul, whatever. The body, hey, welcome back. Great to see you. The soul, whatever. The body, we're going to lean into. Let's lean into the body. It's an unhealthy balance. It's an unhealthy balance of leaning into the body as opposed to the soul. And the hope is that the more we feed the body, the less we'll notice that the soul is crying out and craving attention. And when the soul does crave attention, and we feel this gnawing, right? We feel this gnawing sense of emptiness. Welcome. Good to see you. Good morning. We feel this emptiness inside. We feel this yearning inside for something deeper. What do we do? We fill it with more stuff. We fill it with more materialism. So you can have a situation where a culture says, if you want to be happy, which is a very spiritual value, you want to be happy? I have the answer. You have to buy something new. That's what our culture in 2023 tells us. Getting used to it. Just got used to writing 2022 on my checks. Goes the old joke, right? So our culture says, it's not like ancient Roman culture. Our culture says, you want to be happy? Yeah, you want to be happy? Here's the key to happiness. Pull out your credit card, swipe it, purchase something, you'll be happy. And when that fades, when that wears off, Do it again. You'll be happy. Oh, that didn't work because you bought the wrong one. Or it's like 3 months old. We got a new one. Try that one. Still doesn't work. I'm so sorry. Why don't you try this? Right? That's our society. What I would say is there's a measure of sadness when a culture is so moved in such a way that its best and brightest psychologists, people that understand the human condition, are spending their time, spending their lives trying to figure out how to get people hooked on social media, for example, right? And how to keep people stuck in a loop of you know, the way Instagram, TikTok, all of these apps in which you scroll through, Facebook, the way they all work the same way. They know exactly how many milliseconds you spend on any given post. And anything you give a little extra time to, they learn, they're like, oh, this person likes that content. And they keep on feeding you that content. They try to get you sucked in and seduced. They try to get you inside that space, and they want to keep you on that platform by giving you doses, hits of what you like so that they can give you what they like, which are the advertisers. It's crazy, but it speaks to our culture's definition of happiness. Happiness is seeing something amusing, something entertaining, something fun that somebody created, that somebody is kind of positioning only essentially to monetize you as the product. It's a wild situation that we find ourselves in. You know, what's happening to the brain as far as training the brain to think in like 20 seconds at a time, like 20-second bursts at a time, is, I mean, we will only find out, you know, down the line what this has done to the human being. But I will say this, one thing we know is that civilizations from time immemorial, many have taken this approach that how do we balance between spirit and matter, between the soul and the body? We lean into the body. We have to feed the body. And if we have a sense that we're missing something, well, that just means we need more body stuff. We need more physical stuff. We need to buy more, spend more, acquire more, accumulate more, which we know, all of us know this. Without a question, that doesn't bring happiness. We all know this empirically. We know this because we've tried it before and it doesn't work. It doesn't, you cannot compare the happiness that is born of buying something versus helping someone else. It is incomparable. You can't compare it. And yet, our society says, by and large, you want to be happy? Yeah, you want to feel good? Purchase something, buy something, acquire something, accumulate something, which is never the source of happiness. And yet, this is where we're at. But if you look at ancient civilizations, like I mentioned, the Romans, all about decadence and the body and worshiping the body, etc. So that's one approach. Because again, we have a tension between body and soul. What do we do? How do we deal with this tension? So some go overboard with body. Some go overboard with soul to the exclusion of body. And I'll state this as clearly as I can. I know that we talk about Judeo-Christian values, but on some levels that can be a misnomer, because not always are values attributed to other religions so Jewish at all. When you think about it, the highest position within other famous religions, maybe the big religion here in the United States, right? The highest positions are occupied by those who negate the physical body, who negate, you guys with me on this? Yes? Who shun, for example, the institution of marriage, and right? That's the highest. The highest level is someone who doesn't have that type of physical relationship. And even those who are not on a professional spiritual capacity, so in other words, those that are professionally spiritual can have that type of physical expression, reality, relationship, etc. Those that are not professional, right? The amateurs can, but only as a concession to human weakness, right? As a concession to human weakness. That is, right?
You talking about Catholicism?
Yeah.
That's down here, that's not the tradition. Catholicism is never accepted.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Protestants have a different.
Right. Yeah, for sure. But I'm saying, like, you think about, right? You have an institution where, right, and not necessarily right here.
Well, I can add to the that Boston. There's one of the interesting things of trying to like study Christianity. The amount of writings, detailed writings about heaven and how much heaven is put on such. I wouldn't say it's kind of put on a pedestal.
Higher than a pedestal. Yeah.
That,
Keep on going. I'm listening.
yeah, that it's you almost get the impression that that the soul is so important that the body doesn't matter because you don't want to burden the hell. And that means your eternal soul is more important than what happens to the body. We do say the soul is important. That could be them leaning too far into the soul, saying that because you are so fearful of eternal damnation, you could put such an overemphasis on the soul to negate the body.
And in a big way, oftentimes the body is seen within spiritual movements. The body is seen as kind of like something that drags down the soul, something that stands in opposition to the soul. Like if only the soul didn't have this body to schlep it down, wow, what it could accomplish. What's fascinating is, just to complete the contrast, when you think about Judaism, so the highest spiritual role is filled by someone called the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, or as I like to call him, the big kahuna. But anyway, so the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, and in Jewish law, he had to be married. He had to have a family. You couldn't serve as a high priest if you didn't have a family. That's the extent of how much the high priest. But hold on, here was a guy whose job it was to commune with God. Right? Wouldn't family be a distraction? No.
But it was for Moshe.
Yeah.
Accepted.
That's a hard one to talk, right? And when they talked about it, they got in trouble. When his brother and sister talked about it, how that worked, yeah, that's the one wrinkle that we have. But by and large, it's all about integrating. And so what I'm saying is that whether it's like the approach of the ancient Romans, which is just live and indulge and party and gladiators and physical entertainment, and I mean today we call that football, whatever, but like that type of, we all knew that was going to happen at some point, right? It's a matter of time, right? All right. I don't think I'm going to go too deep into this one today because it's too soon and too whatever. Did anyone else think that at some point we're going to witness that on the field? Yes.
Well, we've witnessed it on the field before, so why wouldn't we witness it again?
There you go. I don't remember. Yeah.
No, it happens a lot to young kids.
Young kids, yeah.
There's one here at the Weber School. Playing flag football.
Oh, really? Oh, I think I remember.
He's touchdown, he's jumping up and down, boom, dead.
Really? Was that recent?
5 months ago. My daughter was standing with him.
Oh my gosh.
Granddaughter.
Wow. So what
Pros, they don't expect it as pros because they're
right.
more monitored.
Right.
That's when on the side, there's a kid in the Jewish community, and he was playing football and they got a concussion. And they took him to the hospital. They thought everything was gonna be okay, and then checked him and he's sleeping, passed away. 16 years old.
Wow. Tragedy.
And it's also why they started, having the rule not targeting. That's partially start helping some of the stuff.
Right. It's brutal. But again, not that this is about football. This is just getting back to the ancient civilizations that emphasize the body, and those civilizations that emphasize soul. They seem like completely opposite approaches, right? Imagine a civilization that's all about sensuality and physicality and hedonism, and then you have another civilization all about spirituality and seeking some higher experiences. And you would say they are completely opposite, and Judaism would say they're the same. They are both the same. They're both extremes of the same perspective that cannot see the two, body and soul, as integrated. So either you go one extreme or the other extreme, but the same point is missing, and that is integration. Judaism takes the third approach. Judaism says it's not body or soul. You don't have to pick one. The soul is holy, but you know what? The body is also holy. And not only is the body also holy, but as we'll see today inside our Kabbalistic text, this is the hot take of Kabbalah. The hot take of Kabbalah we'll have today is the body actually comes from a spiritually higher, deeper, superior source than the actual soul itself. And that's crazy. It's crazy. It's true, but it's wild. It's a wild idea. It's so daring. The Kabbalists, you would think, the Jewish mystics, they were probably all about soul, soul, soul. Body is terrible. Body is weak. Body is frail. Body is getting in the way. Body is the obstacle. Get away from the body, right? You would think that would be what the mystics would push. When you study Kabbalah, Hasidic philosophy, you learn quickly that that's not the agenda that's pushed at all. The agenda that's pushed is integration. Integration, how to find spiritual experiences within the body, not by shunning the body, not despite the body. It's not about leaving the body and having a spiritual experience. It's not about indulging in the body because we can't find balance. It's about finding a balance. Not just some for you, but understanding that really they can be integrated within the same experience. And that experience is finding God, finding purpose, finding truth, finding spirituality in every experience of life, even the very physical ones. Because the body itself is no less spiritual than the soul. In fact, the body is even more, well, I can't say more spiritual. It comes from a higher level, a higher divine level than the soul itself. Again, we're going to explore this inside. Yeah.
Say that, what's the commentary that let's say this person matures with age, the body's aging, the soul would be sort of in parallel, is aging as well. So just like if somebody gets close to death, they might be more emotional, more sentimental. So the soul is too in a lot of essence, right?
I would say that
Ready to leave.
for sure. And I would say as resistance breaks down, there's more of an embracing of the truth. Life is, I once heard the example, I've shared this before. Life is like a picture postcard. Remember postcards back in the day? So now it's like, you send someone a text, like postcards. Now you had postcards. And the way you write a postcard is, for many of us, you started writing a postcard, you didn't know what to say. So you're like, dear mom and dad, you write very big because you thought like maybe it's like take up space, because it was like relatively a lot of space. So you start writing, and then as you started writing, you started thinking more things, and then your writing became a little bit smaller, and then you eventually you ran out of space, so then you looped around the other side. Life is lived like a picture postcard. When we're young, we have all the space, we take it for granted, we live very big, we waste a lot of time, and then as time moves on, and as we realize the lines are running out, we start cramming more and more in, and I think it's a beautiful thing. They say youth is wasted on the young, but it's sure, but it is what it is. I mean, like, what are you going to do? How do you impress? You don't know what you don't know. So, as we get older, I think we just see more life. We've seen more life, and we realize that life is the most precious gift that we have. It's literally the most precious thing that we have. And there's a certain reverence and a certain immediacy and a certain power in that experience, in that awareness. And yeah, it breaks down the resistance. It can break down. It's not automatic, but it can break down a lot of resistance. And it might open up the reservoirs of the soul. The idea here is that the body is itself so spiritually potent. It's so spiritually attuned, but it needs help opening that up. So why is the body so spiritual? I want to share with you three different elements, three different dynamics to help explain, or as we help explore this idea that the body is not just spiritual, but even more spiritually of a higher spiritual nature than the soul itself. And again, I want to make sure this doesn't remain words. It's a very powerful concept. It's a very radical take. Again, we typically think soul is spiritual, body is physical, and that's it. But the body being spiritual, that's a big deal. Alex, jump in. You're muted, so make sure to unmute.
Yeah, Rabbi, as you say, the body is very spiritual. What really rings true for me about this is that when you see someone in a coma, that is actually evidence that the body is spiritual, because the appearance of the person in a coma is completely different than when the soul has departed and the body is without the soul, i.e. dead. Have you ever seen anyone in a coma? You know that the soul still is inside that person, and that is a spiritual body.
Right.
It's an incredible distinction.
And thanks for sharing that. And I think that also this idea that the body is spiritual means theoretically, again, not that we can do this, right? But like even separating out the soul from the body itself contains its own spiritual power. And so let's explore that for a moment. What is the spiritual power of the body itself, even without the soul? So number one, three points that I wish to make. Number one, we know that there's a Hebrew phrase that says "Sof Maaseh b'machshava tchila." We say this every Friday night in the Lechadodi prayer. Sof Maaseh b'machshava tchila means the end of the action is what was initially intended. So, for example, I've shared this example many times. I'm sure you've all heard me say it before. If you want to build a house, so you start off with a dream of what you want your house to look like, and then it goes through many iterations, and it goes through many steps until you finally build your house, until you finally walk through that door. Imagine the last thing that's put up, let's say the mezuzah, the last thing that's knocked into the front door, the mezuzah, the front door, and then you walk into the house. Sof Maaseh, the last action, machshava tchila, is what you initially had in mind. The final blow of the hammer that officially finishes the house, rendering it ready to live in. Sof Maaseh, that end, machshava tchila, that's what you wanted initially. You didn't want initially a half-built home. That was your intention, a half-built home? A partially built residence? Of course not. You had in mind the final product. So the initial intention, the initial machshava is the sof maaseh, is the end of the action. When God creates the world, he created so many things. God created heaven, spiritual realms, earth, all sorts of creatures. We can read about the account in the Torah of the 6 days of creation and then Shabbat. What's the last thing that was created? The human being, the human body, the woman, yeah. But in general, right, the human being. And the message is, no matter how lofty soul, spirits, angels, heaven is, etc., it's the human being, and in a sense, specifically the body, that is the most attuned to what the original intention is, because God's intention is that we physical human beings should create a home for God in this physical space, utilizing our physical bodies and the physical stuff around us and our physical possessions to make it a home for God. That's our job. That can only happen with physical hands and physical feet and a physical brain, physical senses. That only through the vessel. Can't be created by souls. There's a beautiful Kabbalistic imagery. There's beautiful Kabbalistic imagery of a fire. A fire is composed of various elements. Let me rewind for a second. A lamp is composed of different elements. Think of a lamp, an oil lamp. Hanukkah, many people light with oil to commemorate the original finding of the oil. It's funny because in the original story, they didn't find multicolored candles. You know that? It's crazy. I always thought they found twisted multicolored candles. I don't know. They found one box. They had 8 boxes. Who knows?
Made of beeswax, no less.
Exactly. No, the typical ones that are twisted, I don't even think they're beeswax. They're they feel very plasticky. No? It's like very
They melt it. The beeswax burns off. These kind of just.
yeah, these just collapse. Yeah, they're even less quality. The quality is like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what is paraffin. Is that a word? Did I make that up? Paraffin, maybe, whatever. Then you have like the beeswax, and then you have the oil. That's like different. So if you look at an oil, but getting back to this, if you have an oil lamp or oil thing, so you have a container to hold it, obviously, and then you have the oil, the wick, and the fire. You need all 3 components, or really all 4 components to make it work. If you just had oil, you just have a cup with oil in it. That's not illuminating anything. That's not bringing light or warmth. If you have a wick sitting in oil, also not. If you just have a fire, nope. Fire and oil, it sounds dangerous, but that's not going to illuminate in a very. It's not going to help. It's going to burn things down. That's a hazard. Oil and wick, fire and wick alone, also not. It'll burn up the wick in a second, and that's it. It'll be out. It's the magical combination of oil, wick, and fire. A wick sitting in oil with fire attached to it, that's what burns slow and steady, producing light and warmth. You with me on this? It's amazing. You need all 3 components. That's like the human condition. The wick is the body. Kabbalah says the wick is the body. The fuel is the mitzvah, the good deed. And the fire is the soul. You need all 3 elements. You need a soul that's inspired, working with a body that's like the wick, doing something good to create light in this world. If you just have a soul, no light. If you just have a body, no light. If you just have a good deed, a mitzvah, but no one's doing it, no light. You need all 3. You need a good thing being done by a person who's inspired to do that thing. Otherwise, they're not going to do it if they're not inspired. You need the fire, the wick, and the oil. That produces light and warmth. That makes a difference. That creates the change. That creates change. So the body is an integral part of this. You can't pull out the body and say, well, we're still going to make this a holy place. How? You're not going to have fire. You're not going to have the illumination. You're not going to have, the difference won't be made right here, right now. You won't have the Sof Maaseh. You won't have the realization of God's vision. God envisioned a world that is made better by you and I. And how do we make it better? How do we make it beautiful? Through physical actions. The body is holy. That's point number 1. Point number 2. Here we get a little bit loftier and more philosophical, but stay with me, please. So the way Kabbalah describes is as follows. To create something similar to produce an effect that's similar to the cause is relatively easy. Cause and effect works that the cause and effect are close to each other. So to move something an inch forward is easy. Another inch forward, easy. Another inch forward, easy. But to do something radical, to create something radical is difficult. To create something past a quantum leap is truly remarkable. So to create something from something is relatively normal. take a piece of wood and hammer it into a chair, makes sense. But to create a piece of wood from nothing, go try that. Go. Touche. But he's not guilty. So he
Not yet.
not yet. Pleading not guilty, huh? Yeah. A name like that, we hope he's not guilty. I think so. I don't know. I hear your question. I'm not sure. I Bankman Fried. FTX. He's got the Jufro. He's got the whole look. He's right. Just no one's gonna get that detailed. It's still gonna look. The optics are the optics. The optics are the optics. Anyway, the point is like this. To create something from something means that you're taking something and you're creating something else, but you're not really creating something radically different. You're modifying a drop. You're taking one chemical, you're mixing another chemical with it, and you're producing a chemical reaction. Okay, great. But it's all relative. It's all within the same sandbox. But something from creation, yesh me'ayin, creating something from abject nothingness. It's like scientists come to God, the joke goes. Scientists come to God, they say, God, we don't need you anymore. We figured out the mystery of life and how to create life. We can create life just like you. God says, okay, let's have a creation contest. And God says, let's do it old school. Start from the earth. Let's see if you can create a human being from the earth, like I did. Scientists say, no problem. And they start bending down to grab some earth. And God says, oh, whoa. Get your own earth. It's easy to start with something and make something else. Sure, you can start with something and make something else. It's clever, it's smart, it's brilliant. You get all the accolades and all the awards, sure. But you started with something. Start with nothing and make something. Start in an empty room and make something. It's not even empty because there's stuff here, but like start with zero and get some. The greatest number jump is not from 1 to 1,000,000 or 1 to 1,000,000,000. It's from 0 to 1. God created this, us. Yesh me'ayin. The soul is not yesh me'ayin. Sorry, let me translate. God created this. We are something from nothing. We're from God, but nothing that precipitated this, nothing physical existed prior to us emerging as physical beings. The soul is spiritual. The soul has an evolutionary process. The soul has a very clear and defined and logical evolutionary process. There was big light, then smaller light, smaller, more defined. Mazel tov, you have a soul. The soul is a product of a very complex and, elaborate spiritual evolutionary process to produce a soul, a spiritual soul. And the body, no amount of spiritual evolution will ever produce a body. No matter how many times you cut the light, you'll never get a body because the two are completely different. Are you with me on this? Yes? No amount of reshaping light will produce a body. It's a quantum leap to go from spirituality to physicality. It's an absolutely quantum leap to go from one to the other. That is only within the ability of God Almighty, of God's pure, powerful essence to create the physical body, the physical condition. You guys with me on this? Thus, it's the body that reflects God's power even more than the soul. The soul can just happen on its own almost. The soul evolves, but the body is the indication this is God. The body has God's imprint on it. Because when you look at the body, you say to yourself, where did that come from? How could that come? How is that possible? How do you get a body? How do you get something physical out of God? That's divine. That's godly. That's a divine power. That's a godly power to create a body out of nowhere. A soul, you see something spiritual, you don't see God necessarily. So the body has even more godly energy, godly power in it, invested in its creation than even the soul. That's the second. Third point. God is an atheist. It's the title of my book. Actually. Yeah. God is an atheist and other things I learned while teaching Kabbalah. That's the full title. That's the full title. Huh? God is an atheist. What's an atheist? An atheist is somebody who says there's nothing higher than me. Isn't God an atheist? Yeah. Wouldn't God say there's nothing higher than me? I have no source. I have no creator. Wouldn't God say that? Who else says that in the entire expanse of existence? Who is the only creature that has the chutzpah to say nothing higher than me? Humans. Everything else knows that it has a source. Only humans say. You know why? Because human consciousness is so close to the body's consciousness, not the soul. The soul knows it has a source. The body's consciousness mirrors God's consciousness so powerfully that just like God's consciousness says, no source, nothing higher, the body says inherently nothing higher. Are you with me? Yeah. That settles. Yeah. It's almost like a clone. When you clone a hard drive, it's like thought for thought, conception to conception, like idea to idea. It's a clone. It's not a derivative of. Derivative means that it knows it's a derivative. Now it knows it has a source. That's not that consciousness. A clone means the exact same kind of awareness is mirrored here. The fact that the body believes, the human body believes, I exist on my own. I'm a self-made man. I made myself. The fact that the body can think that way is only because it's cloned of the highest consciousness. God's consciousness, God himself, and God's consciousness is nothing higher than me. There's nothing higher than me. There we go.
The duality that you're describing, is that also exactly the duality between the animal soul and the godly soul? Or these?
Yes, the animal soul would be synonymous with the body in today's conversation. So here's what Kabbalah says. To be a healthy human being, it means to recognize that the feeling that we have inside, and even if we're not a self-described atheist, we have tendencies to believe that we're in control of things, right? We have that tendency to believe that we're in control, which is essentially kind of saying there's nothing higher than me, at least in that space, in that moment. That tendency to who else has free choice in creation? Free choice is also a godly, only God has and us. So, well, okay, that's we have to say that for another. Do we really have free choice? All right, hold on. It's a very good question. We gotta not talk about that today, because that needs its own multi-session conversation. But the point is like this. Kabbalah says, know that sense that we sometimes have, that we believe that we're in control, that we're the boss, there's nothing greater than us, that, we created ourselves and everything around us. That sense is actually holy once you know that it's coming from God. So feel it, embrace it, own it, then know that it's coming from God, and then humble it. And leverage it, channel it for something holy. I have a piece of God inside of me, not just in my soul, but in my body. My body consciousness is divine, and that makes me unique. And thus I'm empowered and called upon to do something magnificent with my life. Anyway, these are 3 points, and how the body itself, not just the soul, how the body itself is holy, and sometimes, or in some ways, even holier than the soul. Number 1, Number one, see if I can retrace all three. Number one, it is the self mindset is the end. The body is the end of the entire spectrum of creation. The end is tied to the beginning. Higher than the soul. The soul is somewhere in the middle or somewhere at the beginning of the process. That's where souls exist. The body's at the end. The human body's at the end. That's number one. Number two is that it's through the body that we can truly make a difference in this world and make this world a home for Hashem, for God. And number three, the body consciousness is creation, something from nothing. That's more impressed with the body, with the creation of the body, as opposed to the creation of the soul, which is more spiritually logical. Number three, the body consciousness more closely mirrors the divine consciousness than the soul itself. All right, so with that in mind, let's take a look at a few paragraphs of text inside. We're going to read for the next 10 minutes or so. We're going to read inside, and where it says the yearning soul, we're going to talk about the struggle, the tension of life itself, and really some beautiful topics. So let's jump right into this. This is page 38. It's hard to see, hard to read, but it's page. Sorry, it's from a mimer actually. Yeah, page 38. Okay, I'm just pulling it up on my screen so I can share it online as well. Here we go. Okay, the yearning soul. So beautiful. Consider earthly man, for example. Of course, this is not gender specific. Yeah, Yom Tov Shana 5659. It's a discourse from the fifth Rabbi that he authored starting in 1898 for the high holidays, and it then continued. So it's actually a series of discourses. This is still the first one, the one for Rosh Hashanah, and it's just beautiful about life, creation, everything. So he says, consider earthly man, for example, whose soul's nature is likewise to soar upward. Right? Again, the nature of the soul, the human soul, is to soar up. As the verse referring to the soul's love of God states, her coals are coals of fire, the flame of God. This is a reference, just so you know. It's coming from Song of Songs, which is, of course, it's like a love story between a man and a woman, but we understand this to actually be a description of the relationship between us and God. So it says her coals are coals of fire, the flame of God, kind of evoking the sense of love, of a flaming, passionate love that's seeking to go upward and connect with the source. And he explains, just as the flame constantly soars upward, so too the soul is constantly in a state of upward striving. This is opposite to the body's nature. So he's setting now the tension between body and soul. The soul by nature soars upward. The opposite is true with the body's nature, which drags downward and back inside, and is in a descent below. As in the verse, the spirit of man ascends upward, that means the soul, while the spirit of the animal soul or the body descends downward. So every human being has a soul and a body. We're an amalgam, right? We are a composite creature. We have soul and body, spirit and matter. We have up and down. Let's continue. For the spirit of man, referring to man's godly soul, which is called man, Adam, is in a state of ascent, while the spirit of the animal, the body and animal soul, is in a state of descent. Let's continue. Nevertheless, and this is the kicker, despite the tension, despite the fact that these two forces are pulling in completely opposite directions, nevertheless, the soul descends and draws itself forth to give life to the body. He says it's astonishing. It makes no sense. Why would a soul that wants to run up, why is it running in to the body? He says, now the soul is compelled to descend, contrary to its nature. As in the saying, against your will, you are alive. The soul does not want to be in the body. It wants to be up in heaven. For the soul lives inside the body against its will, contrary to its nature. An essential desire. And what indeed coerces it? This is the kicker. This is the key idea right here. What coerces the soul? You might say God forces it. God pushes the soul. That's we might conclude that. If we didn't read this, we would say God is constantly pushing the soul inside the body. Don't get out, slamming the door, locking it shut, and saying you have to be there. You don't want to, doesn't matter. This is where I decreed you to be, inside this body that is the exact opposite of everything you are. That's not what he says. He says, what coerces the soul to be there? The body itself. For the source and origin of the body transcends the soul. If you ever want to know what a hot take in Kabbalah looks like, or a radical idea, it's that line. What coerces, what forces the soul, the divine soul, to go inside the body itself, because the soul knows that as spiritual as it is, that body that looks so ugly. I don't mean that, right? But I mean that spiritually that looks so ugly, so coarse, that body is even more spiritual than it. The soul sees, because the soul knows these things, that the light emanating from the darkness of the body is the greatest. It's like when you meet someone who's been through the worst, and you can tell that their spirit, despite the darkness, because of the darkness, that their spirit is so powerful. They're so real. They're so present. They're so engaged. Despite everything that happened to them, their heart is open. You can sense the light that emerges from the darkness. That's how the soul sees the body.
So
The
reason the body is more important, just I'm paraphrasing, is because the soul needs the body.
And because, as he says here, the source of the body transcends the soul for all of the reasons that I shared before. It's the culmination of the purpose of creation. It's what brings light into this world. It has a higher spiritual consciousness than the soul itself, because it replicates the divine awareness, etc. But that's what draws the soul, even though the soul is like, I don't know why I'm drawn to this body. The body has the greatest light. It's that dark light of the flame. You know what I'm talking about, right? When you look at a fire, look at this, look at the bottom of the fire. The hottest part of the fire is dark. It's that dark light that's the brightest. It's the hottest. Maybe not the brightest. You have to know how to see it, right? You have to know how to look at it. And Kabbalah speaks about this at length. The dark fire is the most powerful. It's way more powerful than the white light, than the yellow light. It's that dark blue, purple, black almost. For the source and origin of the body transcends the soul indeed. Second to last line in 38. The soul stems from the level of godliness that permeates the world. That's called malay kolam, without getting too deep into the Hebrew phraseology. The soul comes from a malay kolam, which is a lower level of light. While 39, the source of the physical body is the infinite light, which transcends all the worlds. The soul, you know what they say, like men come from Mars, the soul comes from spirituality, and the body comes from God. The soul is spiritual, but the body is godly. This idea is expressed in the verse, all that the Lord desired, he has made. The Hebrew is, Kol asher chafetz Hashem asa. All that God desired, he made. For making physicality, making something physical, stems from God's desire and will, as explained in the discourse entitled Bayom Hashmini, etc., etc. Okay, he then cites other discourses that speak about this. The physical is what God really wants. As I said before, that's why God created all this. Sof Maisa, physical body. That's why he did all of this. He didn't create all this to have a legion of angels, kadosh, kadosh, kadoshing him all day, saying holy, holy, holy. It's not why he did this. Know why, if you want to know why somebody did something, is doing something, follow their actions to the end and see where they stop. Where they stop, that means they got what they want. Because if they didn't, they would keep on going. Where does God stop? Physical body of the human being. That's what God wanted. That's why creation stops right there. All of this is a setup to this. The body is higher than the soul with the power of its back inside, with the power of its primary source. In other words, the fact that the body comes from such a high, lofty place, the body forces the soul to behave contrary to its nature and to descend and draw itself forth to animate the body. The body is so powerful by virtue of its source that it naturally sucks the soul into it. He says this explains injury and death, recovery. Let's continue. We therefore see that when, God forbid, any injury occurs to one of the body's limbs, thereby causing the light of the soul to withdraw from that limb, and the injury is subsequently healed, the light of the soul is then drawn down automatically. He talks about recovery here. He says, what is illness, or what is, I don't know if illness is the right word, but injury and recovery? Injury means the body is compromised. And when the body is compromised, the soul is not being pulled by the body. If the body is not strong, understand his framing. When the body is healthy and strong, it pulls the soul. When the body is not so strong and healthy, it doesn't have the force to pull the soul. So the soul separates from the body in that one area. When the body regains its strength, it once again pulls the soul down into it. That's how he explains injury and recovery. No procedure is necessary to draw it into the body. In other words, to once again bring it down into the body. Rather, it is extended automatically. For the body's limbs compel the light of the soul and draw it in. Imagine like an arm, sore, a muscle, right? Or a broken limb. Limited functionality. So the functionality is a power of the soul that is working with the body. When the body is not strong enough, the power of the soul doesn't operate in that space. When the body recovers, the soul once again re-energizes, reanimates, reconnects, and thus fills it with that light and energy. He then talks about fainting. The fact that some procedure is necessary to draw the light of the soul into one who has fainted, such as providing a potent scent which revives the soul, does not disprove the above. He says, wait a second, what about smelling salts? Somebody who fainted, you have the smelling salts. So we see that the body is not strong enough to pull the soul, right? So isn't that a contradiction? He says, no, that's not a contradiction at all. For in truth, it is the body's weakness that makes us necessary. Since when it is very weak, strategies are necessary to revive the soul, such as the use of page 40, potent scent. But if the body were healthy and in working order, the soul would return even without the above device. So his point, and we're going to end here.
Here you're talking about the soul as being life?
Yes. The soul as being the life and the energy, and the body being the container. And we typically think, obviously the soul is greater than the body. And he's flipping the script. He's saying, no, the soul, because what compels the soul to give life to the body? You could say that God is pushing it, but that's not his approach. He's saying that the body itself, the soul recognizes the superiority of the body. And the soul says, you know what? I mean, I don't know how this body has all this power, but man, this body is really powerful. This dark light is brighter than my white light, and thus I'm going in there. But if the body is too weak, the soul, like in a specific area of the body, that soul power can't go there. So whether it's sight or hearing or other physical abilities, walking, moving, lifting, whatever, when the body is compromised, the power of the soul that works with the body is likewise not being drawn because the body is not strong enough to pull it. And thus it's not there until the body gets healthier. And then the power of the soul comes back. And that he continues to talk about sudden death, how that's also about the body being compromised, etc. Essentially, all death is about that. When the body becomes weakened to a certain point, it no longer draws the soul. And it, in a sense, lets go.
Doesn't need the soul. Because the soul
Also,
the body's there in order to someone put in our body in order to either improve it or hurt it. It's God's test. So like we need the actions in order to either improve the soul or not through the body. So that's the imminent need for the body. And so just like the person was saying on online, is that in a coma, it's getting ready to leave. You know, so it's there's no imminent purpose.
Right. And we also have this idea that when the body's purpose is fulfilled, so that it no longer is able to, it no longer generates that light to draw the soul, and the soul naturally disconnects. It's kind of like a magnetic pull. If you were able to turn on and off a magnet, right? You would either, if it's on, it's pulling the other thing to it. It's like, there are doors or gates that work with magnets, right? Yeah, like, right? You get like a type of a thing and it release whatever. So you release the magnet. Life is like the body is the magnet drawing the soul. The body is powerful. It's a powerful magnet. But when the body is compromised, whether because it's the end of its mission or because of, God forbid, sudden injury, etc., when the body is weakened and the magnet no longer is magnetic, so to speak, either part or all of the soul disconnects from that space. All right, yeah.
The Rabbi in this time period, he's talking about a lot of the how, but does he bring up the why?
Which part of the why?
Why the soul and why the soul would be based on time?
He doesn't get, I don't think he gets into that here, why the soul leaves. He talks about Aaron's sons who died here a little bit later. He talks about other forms of death. It's more like he's describing the how and describing the mechanism by which this works. And in the process, explaining that the body, which the big idea here today is that the body on one level is more powerful than the soul. And that's why the soul runs after the body.
My question really comes from why does bad things happen to people?
Yeah.
Because like I'm saying back then, when he was talking about this, was he ever to bring that up?
I mean, it's discussed in text, not in this one necessarily, but it's discussed at length in Tanya and other Chassidic texts, mystical texts. So as we conclude today, I think my parting words, as it were, would be the following. Many people have dealt with the tension between body and soul in many different ways. And many people have taken the approach of favoring one over the other. Like, let's lean into the body all the way, or let's lean into the soul all the way. Judaism says, let's integrate the two. The soul is powerfully spiritual, and you know what? The body is also powerfully spiritual. Let's work together to make a difference. Let's work together to bring light to this world. And so it goes back to what I wrote in the email for those that saw the email. Baal Shem Tov taught, I meant to say this before, and I didn't, so I'm going to say this very quickly. There was a time in Jewish history where, let's just refer to it as non-Jewish influences influenced the Jewish community. And many people who considered themselves very spiritual would physically harm their bodies through excessive fasting, through forced exiles upon themselves, sitting down on a mound of red ants and allowing the ants physically to bite their body. They would do that. There were those who did that, thinking that that was a way to serve God. Physical, almost abusing the body as a way of serving God. And I will tell you that the Baal Shem Tov, one of the big ideas of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Chassidic movement, is that he said that's not what God wants. The body is sacred. The body is holy, much like we discussed today. Our job is not to hurt the body, but to harness the body. It's not about hurting the body, looking at it as the enemy of spiritual connection, but as an ally. It's like an animal, right, that we need to harness and train. And when you train and harness the animal, it's even more powerful than the human. That's why we don't refer to cars in human power, but horsepower, because animals are stronger than humans. They are. Animals are more, an ox, it's just stronger than a person. Even if his name is Dwayne Johnson, right? It's like an ox or whoever, whatever. It's like even the strong, I know he's not the strongest guy, but he's a guy I think of when I think of strong people. Yeah, someone who's really strong, a behemoth is still stronger, an animal is still stronger. It's just the way it is. The body and animal soul are stronger than the soul. It's about harnessing. So this is one of the big ideas and the big messages. Let's not believe that we can't have physical experiences and be spiritual. We can. We don't have to fast all day to be holy. You can eat. You can live a physical life with a mindset of doing the physical things for a higher purpose. And that lends it holiness and integrates body and soul the way they were meant to be integrated. Thank you very much for joining me this morning for Kabbalah Cafe. Hope you have an inspired week. And of course, go dogs, because that is the local the local thing. That's true also. That's true. That's true. That's true. I'm surprised that Rabbi Refson and Rabbi Sharfstein are so close. If there's such a strong rivalry, that's probably true. One guy from Brooklyn, one guy from Leeds, probably not noted historians of the rivalries. All right, good. Dr. Maxi, Mariana, Fran, great to see you.
Thank you very much. Beautiful class. Thank you.
Mariana, give my best to Alex, the whole mishpacha. Hope you guys are doing well and healthy, and only good things, only blessings.
Thank you very much. And all the blessings for you and for your family and for everybody.
Amen.
In the class.
Lots of love to everybody. Fran and Joy, great to see you guys. All right, Shavua Tov. Take care.
Shavua Tov.